All right. How
Hello.
you doing? How's your day been?
Good. It's been okay. I've had a few days off, so I've come back to a lot of change.
Ah,
You could say. Caught up on all the legislation and the jurisdiction stuff, and
mm.
yep, that's been an interesting read.
Were you around during the July 3rd situation?
No, I'm aware of what happened, but I wasn't awake at that time. No.
I got you. Okay. So, I'm gonna go on a bit of a limb here, and there's a good chance I'm gonna win that election coming up for mayor. And myself and my team have, regardless of what the outcome is, we want to at least have a bit of a plan going into it. If we do win, to kind of get started, week one, instead of kind of
Okay.
spending weeks trying to figure out what to do next. And probably the biggest challenge that I think the administration is going to face is working on improving the LSPD, and that means morale, effectiveness, the whole 9 yards. I have noticed that this particular shift doesn't seem to have many problems comparatively to the next shift. I understand part of that might be like a volume issue, right? There might be like 3 times as many calls or whatever, but there also appears to be 3 times as many bozos, just in my opinion. I want to understand what you think the problems are in the PD, and if you could speak to this shift, the next shift, and what you think would be, what do you think the PD would need in order to turn some of the negatives into positives?
Okay. I think for this shift specifically, because we've had our own sort of battle to fight with this shift. We for a while. So years and years ago, it used to be that shift 3 was its own sort of island. For a few months, shift 1 became that, and unfortunately, shift 1 is. I know it's seemingly quiet today, dare I say it, but it can get very hectic. It's sort of like a cross between shift 3 and shift 2. And you get the first half of shift 1 is fairly chilled. The second half of shift 1 is very much on the side of shift 2 similarity. So shift 1 is actually more or less 2 shifts in one. We lacked high command assistance, presence, everything, honestly, in shift 1 for the longest time. When Captain Root stepped down, we were left with basically no one. I put into a position of command as sergeant and told, hey, the shift is yours, do what you want. But that wasn't the case. I couldn't do what I wanted. I couldn't support it how I wanted to. I couldn't clean it up how I wanted to. I still had to, and I still feel I have to go through high command about a hell of a lot. Trying to clean up people's acts. I'm very well aware that we have officers who straight up don't know how to do their job or violate people's rights, whether knowingly or ignorantly. And when I tried to put a stop to that sort of thing, and when it came to a reviewal of an officer, instead of, just to put it plainly, Nino, there was a panel where I was advocating for the removal of an officer due to their actions time and time again, being unbecoming of an officer, violating rights, etc., etc. And instead of that person getting fired, they got promoted to full officer.
Wait,
by
what?
yeah by high command. High command ultimately had the decision. Command were at the panel. We got asked for our input. It was pretty 50-50. But ultimately, the decision was made to keep that officer and promote them to a full officer, despite the fact, by the way, this was their second chance. They'd already been fired once. So I had that battle. From there, conveniently, the sheriff's elections came up, and I ended up running for a position as the sheriff. I never thought I was going to win, anything like that. I knew there were more popular candidates than me, but I used it as a chance to sort of go around talking to people, seeing what people wanted out of a law enforcement department, and wanting to reassure people that people would be held accountable. Because the big thing for me was accountability within the police department. I'm not on about people committing crimes and stuff. Like, I can do my job, as I know multiple others can, but we were lacking that stability, the consistency, the oversight, keeping people in check, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And I still believe to this day we are suffering with symptoms of that. Um, we have far more people within command positions now who are able to do it, and they are doing a decent job with it. But we're finding ourselves having to stamp out habits that people have formed and been able to run with for the longest time. People quite simply don't like being held accountable. They don't like being responsible. Honestly, I couldn't give a shit. They're a law enforcement officer. We're trusted with upholding people's rights, not violating them. The reason why we enact is to protect people. And if people aren't on board with that, I'm not that interested, to be honest with you.
Mm.
So I've tried to air that. We've tried to correct it. It's been working for the most part. I'm starting to hear things again, potentially, of, people violating rights again. I think it's always going to be a thing. Unfortunately, I think there's always going to be people slipping up. My main concern is how people may make a mistake and move on. Mistakes are fine. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But if people are not going to learn from those mistakes, or even flat out deny those mistakes, or lie about them, or even do things purposefully, then I'm not interested. But yeah, there's a huge lack of numbers at the moment. There's a huge amount of pressure on the PD to perform. There's been a very large lack of structure and guidance throughout that. It's been a bit of a battle, I'm going to be honest with you. The other shifts, I can't really speak on. Shift 3 tends to have their shit together a hell of a lot more, but Shift 3, in my opinion, has always been very much like that. They keep a well-oiled machine, because they have to operate that way because they're usually a hell of a lot lower on numbers than any other shift. But as I think about it, I'm pretty sure that they're probably better on numbers than Shift 1 right now.
Yeah. So I want to ask some kind of pointed questions. Where's the pressure to perform? Where is it coming from, and what kind of performance is being asked of you?
So the pressure to perform it's coming from all angles. As a command member, I feel it from all sides, right? So there is a pressure for me to ensure that my shift is running as it should do. I'm being told that, it's your decision. You do what you want with your shifts. It's yours, whatever. But then obviously I have to report back to high command, and then high command will step in over certain things. I still have to seek permission. I'm still waiting weeks at a time for answers on changes that need to happen on SOPs to reflect legislation, things like that. When the new FOIA stuff came in, I wanted to write up a guideline for officers for them to know what would happen if a FOIA was requested, because it also meant stopping dispatch from just sending out reports as they were trained to do so before. And I had to wait for the longest time to get approval for that. When I needed it there and then, basically, to put an announcement out so people knew what they were doing. There's a pressure to perform, obviously, for the general public point of view. There's never-ending complaints. There's always going to be crime, right? There's always going to be a hell of a lot more crime than we can, I guess, staff for. But the fact that, you know, we end up with complaints about professionalism, how they feel that officers are treating them or even judging them. There's that sort of pressure to be able to stamp that out and, you know, uphold what we're supposed to be doing. Recently, I had to tackle the issue of respectability. Um, People forget that everybody's a civilian. Everybody is a civilian of the state, right? And when you're talking to people, you should be treating people how you wish to be treated yourself. And if you're going to treat someone like a scumbag, they are more than likely going to treat you as a scumbag. So you can't really argue that one. But we have a professionalism and a professional appearance to uphold. We are given powers that other people within the state will not have. And it's bestowed upon us with our training and education, everything like that, and trust, responsibility, integrity. If we can't reflect that we can act like that, then, you know, we're doing something sincerely wrong, severely wrong. Um, so there's obviously I get calls. I get a lot of calls from people about how officers are doing things wrong. I then have to like trickle that down through command. Um, so there's always going to be the pressure from the civilian side. It's either you're not
Mm.
doing enough or you're going too hard. It's like a balancing act ultimately for people that don't really want to balance. Some people see us as a hammer, and you know, at the end of the day, we're just here to gather enough information to then bring it to the courts. Essentially, we're here to make sure that justice is served, make sure that people are protected. We're not here to just big dick people. Um, then you've got obviously the DOJ, the expectations of DOJ. Their main concern is ensuring that people's rights aren't being violated, things like that, and everybody's you know, got a right to a fair trial, etc., etc. Because we didn't even have a basic PD setup, it's taken us the longest time to even get into sort of line with them. So there is obviously that pressure to perform.
Mm.
There was then the fact that when the police department split into two, into BCSO and LSPD, you've then got to handle like a decent amount of officers who are good at what they do, left LSPD to go to BCSO.
Yeah, that's
So
got to
it's
be very damaging. You know,
it's
people.
weakened us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something that I'm a stranger to though. I
Mm.
I had to handle this sort of thing a hell of a lot a long time ago. With people transferring to different departments, it was always like our best officers, right? Which, you know, as a compliment, you know, they were sought after, really. Like people moving to troopers, things like that. Great. Um, but when we're as low on numbers as we are, splitting into two different departments was very difficult. Now I understand that there's going to be different requirements of the counties, like Los Santos County and Blaine County, dependent on the mayors that get elected in and them acting in the best interests of the citizens around them. So there's going to be that sort of pressure as well. Obviously, I'm not someone to shy away from a challenge. Like I'm fully expecting that things are going to be a little bit more rough in the beginning. But I'm kind of compared to how everything was going, I'm pretty excited for the change.
Okay.
A lot of people credit Max with giving us life in the PD, and those people forgot about the first term and a half that he did, where he attempted, or what felt like attempted, to annihilate us with the quota, with bringing our pay right down, with treating us like scumbags, with coming in and just screaming in our faces. I'm not going to deny, towards the end, he did give people a bit of a pep in their step, but I believe he had other motives, and for some reason, I was the only one who was willing to actually tell him no to his face a couple of times, and which obviously didn't go down well with him. But when I was having to do that in front of high command members, as you know, a sergeant lieutenant at the time, it's not something that I would expect, really. I'd expect somebody towards the top to be the one doing that.
Yeah. So, let's say, in the middle of a court case, somebody that reports to you is heard calling a individual on the stand, an individual that has no criminal record, an individual that has no affiliation with a defendant. And when that individual goes and explains something that may not be helpful to the PD's case, that officer, under oath while speaking, you know, in front of the court, states, well, she's working for the other side. How would you handle that situation if that came across your desk?
If that came across my desk, I'd be pulling them aside and investigating it further. I don't believe we're not in a position to be judging where people are from, what they might be doing. Yes, we might have our suspicions, but that is wholly unprofessional. In a court of law, in front of a judge, in front of the general public, that's wrong on so many levels, and
Yeah.
quite frankly, a little bit embarrassing. Is this real? Did that happen? Is this a
Assistant Chief Ruby.
hypothetical?
Last night. I imagine Barrick hasn't done shit. All right. Second example. Individual, clean record, pulled over in a traffic stop. Officer identifies him verbally. He gets a response back. Individual's wearing a mask. He produces an ID. ID matches the voice the officer recognizes, matches the license plate of the vehicle. The individual doesn't want to take the mask off. Verbal altercation. Well, not verbal. There's a disagreement as to whether the mask needs to be taken off or not. Understandably, law enforcement has the right to ask an individual to take their mask off for identification purposes, because who knows where that call is going to escalate. As per the disagreement, the officer gives a lawful order to have that driver step out the vehicle and places him in cuffs. There is no resistance. The driver complies. The individual is then brought down to Mission Row PD. At no point is the mask removed. Individual is fingerprinted, etc., etc. At the end of it, I go down to represent them, and look, I'm just gonna shoot straight. Okay, Marlo Stanfield is pulled over by law enforcement. Officer Ventura decides to arrest him, despite Marlo complying. I have a chat with Ventura, let him know that why didn't you take off the mask at the during the traffic stop? Because the moment you brought him down while masked, right, you sort of lose the underlining reason for the lawful order to begin with. And I met with because I can. My problem with that, Vivian, is that sort of attitude sort of ignores how far compliance with civilians can go. That sort of attitude is the baseline by which civilians start to justify driving off and escalating things on their own accord, because it drives like a feeling of like, well, if I'm gonna get fucked anyways, I might as well do whatever the next thing is. And while that doesn't necessarily justify furthering illegal activities, this is Los Santos, right? It's not New York, it's not Boston. It's a whole different new puzzle. And my concern is that what I sort of just described here seems to be shift 2 in general. There's always a justification for over-escalation and not looking for motives, ways to de-escalate. And de-escalation doesn't mean someone's killed 8 cops and find a way to, like, let them go. I mean, using some level of common sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've had that conversation recently where I had to try and remind officers that, you know, if we're rolling into certain areas of the city and we're investigating stuff, you know, don't just go in and start treating people like shit because you know that they're a gang member. No, you're on their doorstep at the end of the day. You're at their home. This is their home. You know, it might also be their turf, whatever you want to call it. But you wouldn't like someone coming in and treating you like shit on your doorstep. So don't do it to other people. And it was very difficult because people then automatically jump to, okay, so we're just supposed to let them treat us like shit. It's not the same thing. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what you're saying right now. It's basic common decency to treat people with respect.
Yeah.
If someone is treating you like a twat, then you don't have to even give them the satisfaction of responding. You're gonna get on with your job, ask the questions that you need to. If they're not gonna comply, they're not gonna comply, that sort of thing. But to know that people are doing shit just because they can scares me, because I feel like that is a cover-up answer for when you don't have the articulation for why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And if you can't articulate it, then you shouldn't be doing it.
That is... Look, I'm gonna be very plain with you. Shift 2 LSPD is the biggest embarrassment to Los Santos I have witnessed from the beginning of my time in Los Santos. And I have been in my... I don't know what the fuck that can possibly be done, because I feel as though what you just described is the behavior by the most. Is that when asked to articulate why you are doing something, there's just no answer. It's bullshit like, well, we barely get any arrests. Well, what do you want us to do? They get away. Those aren't police-like responses. They are not like... I swear to God, it feels like, Vivian, some people are joining the police force just to shoot and drive. And that is not it.
Yeah.
That is not the definition of serve and protect. It's looking at the bigger picture and saying, how do we bring general safety to the public? I'm quite honestly, I feel like more people around this shift have their head on straight, and I do recognize that there's more calls in the next shift, right? But if things continue in this direction, it's only going to get worse. There's such a them versus us mentality, and there's no how do we find a middle ground? How do we dial things back? Because I know that there was a academy, I want to say like 2 weekends ago now, where I saw something like 30 to 40 officers. And then a month prior, there was also another 30 to 40 cadets. But there's like 6 officers on duty. And when I pose the question, well, where are they? There's like, well, there's a morale issue. Well, there's not enough FTOs. Or I'm like, okay, well, how do you fix the problem of, you know, morale? And there's no response to it other than faster cars. Or, you know, we're getting beaten down too hard. Here's what I want to do, Vivian.
Okay.
And I want your honest, and please do keep this to yourself, because it's not in stone, right? It's one of many things I'm trying to get understanding of, because keep in mind, I'm not police, right? I don't really know what's going on inside the department. I think LSPD is like a chewed up toy now. Maybe not so much in this shift. Quite frankly, I barely have any problems in the shift. But next shift, it's like the splitting of the department caused LSPD to look like it'd be like a chewed up skeleton, you know? And patching it up is almost impossible because you're going to be dealing with so much resistance of PogChamp Andes or whatever the fuck you want to call them at this point, that there would be so much pressure of like, but I want to go to this shootout, but I want to go to this other fucking robbery or whatever the fuck, that building up a solid foundation would probably be next to impossible. Instead, I want to almost satellite off an initiative to build up something from scratch and eventually have that new thing take over the LSPD and replace it. So in other words, a 4-week runway to build up a very strong foundation, command structure, and expectations, and then dismantle it. And if it means letting some LSPD officers go, I don't really give a fuck, because some of them probably should have been let go a long time ago.
Yeah.
How would that vibe with you?
I'd be down to give it a go, honestly. I agree with you with the chewed up fucking dog toy. It very much feels like that. I feel like we've been fucked over, but then also we haven't helped ourselves. Internally, there was a struggle like a few months ago do you know what? From the very start of the police department, I think I was hired like a week after, and I was witnessing things back then where people were trying to hold people accountable, and those people were basically forced out and bullied out. And
Yeah,
it very
I
nearly
saw
happened
some
to
of that.
me. Yeah, it very nearly happened to me for the same reason. I had people running away and snitching on me to a mayor that I had never ever met, who then formulated an opinion on me and took it upon himself to question other shifts in shift meetings about me and my actions. So I've seen it, and I think the entirety of the PD, like shift 2, I know there are some very good officers in shift 2, and to hear that there's all sorts of shit like that going down during shift 2 is really disheartening. I don't think it's any individual person to blame at that point. I
No.
believe it's the leadership, and
Yeah, that's kind
there
of...
needs to be like grabbing the shoulders and shaking. Like I feel like that's the sort of place
Yeah.
we're at right now.
Yeah, if there's not strong leadership, people just do whatever the fuck they want. My desire out of a LSPD would be one that can, look, I recognize that there's more violence happening today than PD has the resources to handle. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. You're not going to save everybody. People are going to get kidnapped. People are going to die. But the one thing is that if PD gets stretched so thin, trying to tackle everything, nothing gets tackled. Things get done halfway, quarter way, and that leads to more frustration and more violence. I'm more than willing to accept shit hitting the fan short term and allowing PD to grow at a pace in which each and every call can be resolved. I'm going to go even further, is that that FOIA legislation that passed, a lot of that is my doing. I've put up a very big stink about it. Mostly because I come from a lawyer background, and I'm a strong believer that things should be able to be worked down in the cells, get it sorted, even if it means both sides only gets 50%, one side gets something. You know what I mean? I'd rather get that shit resolved like then and there instead of wait 2 months, dragging people through court. I'll go as far as saying I'd rather FOIAs get done within 24 hours because, quite frankly, if you have the probable cause to press charges, then why isn't it in the report to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what that does is naturally, whether you're the person getting the charges or the officer involved, you can move on from the situation, right? And move on to the next thing instead of having this bullshit in the back of your mind, right? But for the cop, it's like, oh, fuck, I got this court case now. That could have been resolved in the cells, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, it might have meant a few less charges, but who gives a fuck, right? Like, and in time, right? Let's say 6 months from now, maybe PD can be 3 times as big and handle more cases and whatnot. But at least the back isn't breaking and people aren't
Yeah.
quitting. And it doesn't feel like you're going from ping to ping to ping to ping because someone is yelling down that you have to. So Vivian, look, you've been probably the most, logical person I've spoken to so far in command position. I've got a lot of thinking to do, but
Okay.
would you be, if asked to take on the challenge, is that something you'd be willing to take on?
The challenge of what? Sorry.
Well, running the Los Santos Police Department.
I'd give it a bloody good try.
All right. And so what I want you to do, your homework, and I want to be very clear about this, is that this isn't a guarantee, right? I still have others to speak to, but I will be transparent that the list is fucking short as fuck, to the point that people are telling me to bring Pred back, but that's going to be over my dead body. But I want you to at least start coming up with a plan, because I will not be a man that's going to come in and become the next commissioner. I think that was fucking brain dead as fuck. But there is going to be policy expectations, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you might get pulled into an office and be like, why the fuck is this murder not being looked into, right?
Yeah.
But you're not going to see me bringing it in and be like, why is there fucking 5 maze banks that didn't get responded to? If you tell me, well, we're working these other cases and we don't have resources, I won't give a fuck. It's just federally insured money. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree.
I will understand that there will be people that are going to come in, criminals that are going to be crying over dumb shit. That doesn't bother me. It happens. I think the attack on Mission Row PD was idiotic. But at the same time, you know, I want to see officers that are focused on being able to articulate why the fuck they're doing what they're doing and making conscious, reasonable decisions. Having conscious, reasonable decisions behind their actions. And if that means solely building up a department and it's only 10 people after a month, I'm okay with that. Because that 10 people is a beacon for a future. We got years, you know, before we probably see another administrative collapse, right? So I'm okay with slow progress and pacing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's something that I wanted to, when Barrett got into chief position, I kind of wanted to focus on basically recruiting a small group of people at a time, so that we can personally get to know them, so that we can personally get them through. One of the biggest things that we have, well, one of the biggest tools that we have is our numbers, right? That will fail if we don't have the ability to trust in each other, and that's gonna happen if we don't know who the hell we're working with. So mass hiring, I hate that shit. That's
same
out the
here.
door. It doesn't work. It's pointless, and all it does is work people to the bone for maybe 1 or 2 people to stick around.
There's still a lot of gray area as to, I know I can pick a chief, but there's nothing that I don't know if I'm able to cut off another department, but my backup plan is the current LSPD is called like LSPD beta or some shit like that. You know what I mean? And just becomes a branch that you pull from into, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways to make this happen, but I want you to start coming up with a plan. I'm a big fan of seeing documentation, right? Here's a proposal, boom, boom. You know what I mean? I like the fact that you're thinking about getting the paperwork shit done in advance of everything, like even the FOIA stuff. That's what I like to see. I don't like even transparently, after thinking about Barrick, I know he got fucked pretty badly, but at the same time, it's been 3 weeks since Max has been gone. So what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. That our whole style needs to stop being reactive, and we need to be proactive, because I'm sick of like having to answer for things instead of having something laid out before things happen.
Okay.
Being able to prevent things is going to be our, our strongest our strongest form of attack on a lot of crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Get me like a 1 to 2 page proposal of what you'd like to see. I'm gonna be asking other candidates the same, but look, you're the first one where I'm like, okay, I believe she can actually be successful, for what it's worth, and that includes who your ass chief would be. Don't tell them, please, because I don't want to start like a rumor
No.
mill. But that ass chief should probably be operational in shift 2. So there's a splitting of high command.
Okay.
Shift 3, just transparently, I'm not super concerned about. Like, that can probably, you can put someone there. But look, the shitty ticks the hottest in a certain time zone. So you can't have holes there. It's just
yeah. No, I agree with you.
okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
easy.
thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And
right.
as soon as it's done, if you want to take a look at it, I might kick it back, etc., etc. But if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. And look, I'm just be prepared. I don't really fuck with emotions. I say it how it is, and I expect pushback, right? If you say if you tell me something's dumb, like, I want to know that, right? But I expect you're going to be prepared to hear bullshit coming from me too. So.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of pushing back. That's kind of what I do and what I'm kind of known for. So
okay,
yeah, I'll don't worry about that.
good shit. All right, thank you for your time.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nino.
Yeah, Vivian's the only one that I can reasonably she's the top candidate. Just from that conversation, like, no bullshit. Let's get work done. That's what I want. None of this like jerk me off bullshit. She's got a plan. She has a vision. She knows things need to get done. That's what I want to see. Like, I don't like want to be begging for shit. I don't have time for that. And so far, she seems like the only one that's like willing to run.